Politicians and philosophical questions. Welcome, Vanakkam, good morning. I don't know if this has occurred to you that politicians, in the way they conduct themselves, can raise very fundamental ethical and philosophical questions. Whether such questions are asked or not depends not on the politicians but on the rest of us. If we have any deeper interest in life, then their conduct, even if they are unaware of its implications, will raise certain fundamental questions which are of great significance not just to us but to humanity as a whole. Now, from the very beginning of the human history of thought, it has been recognized that a very basic duty and need every human being has is the need to know oneself. In fact, this is a heart, or if you like, the seed of Greek philosophy. It is the seed of all spiritual traditions in the world, and it is also in many ways the essence of the psychology that drives us. Now, in this regard, there are two completely contrary views about human nature. Before I name these two contrary views, let me share with you the context in which this particular thought has been awakened, activated, and intensified in my life recently. When I name the context, please don't misunderstand my intentions. I do not intend to cast any negative reflection on any particular political leader. I'm a dispassionate observer of human nature. I have been lifelong a student of literature. I have been a teacher, and one cannot be a teacher unless one is deeply and philosophically interested in the meaning and conundrums of life. The ultimate thing for a teacher, irrespective of the subjects a person teaches, is life. So, everything related to life is of material interest to me. And to me, the individual players on the stage of life are mere accidents. I'm not saying that individual life has no significance, but from a higher perspective, every one of us is here to reveal one particular aspect or the other of this infinite phenomenon called life, all of whose aspects can never be exhausted. Even if there are 100 billion people on earth living today, they would not exhaust the infinite possibilities of life. Each one of us embodies a small microscopic slice of life. Life is so vast and infinite that through the rest of human history, its possibilities will not be exhausted, no matter how many people come into this world and fade out of it. So, I pick and choose instances, particularly instances that loom large in public life, and by doing so compel us to think about life, not about them, but about life. And therefore, I see these important public figures also as invitations to think about the meaning and the interesting attributes or aspects of life. So it's only in this sense that I pay attention to individuals. As of now, as everyone knows, the whole country is focused on just two individuals, Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi, our Prime Minister, of whom we have a great deal of national pride, and Sri Rahul Gandhi, the very exciting leader of the opposition, the first leader of the opposition in 10 years. A person who comes into the political domain like a whiff of fresh air, quite unlike a stereotypical politician, but in his own right, very effective, very challenging, and a person who compels me to think a great deal about life, as Sri Narendra Modi himself does. So, from my perspective of reflecting on life and from my discipline as a thinker on life, Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi are inseparable. They are of equal value to me. But when I say this, the stormtroopers from both camps will become angry with me because they want one to be preferred over the other. That's only because they don't reflect on life. When you begin to reflect on life and seek its deeper meanings, you will realize that all such thoughts are very infantile, childish, and puerile. What matters is not whether X is more important than Y or Y is inferior to X. What matters is whether or not they stimulate thoughts in you, and if a person who seems to be very non-glamorous, if you like, weak, not self-assertive, not very dramatic, serves to catalyze thoughts in you, that person has the same value as a man who exudes power and who struts on the stage of life as if he is the only human being worth anyone's attention. Both are of equal value to a person who reflects on life and who regards these two manifestations of life as mere invitations to thought. That's where I stand, and therefore when I make references to Rahul Gandhi or Narendra Modi, thoughts of inferiority, superiority, or personal loyalty or personal animosity are farthest from my thought. But unfortunately, since everybody's attitude now is hardwired in terms of partisan loyalties, both camps will be disappointed when I do not harp the themes that they are particularly keen to hear about. Let that be. I have said a great deal about Rahul Gandhi of late because he has fired far too many thoughts in my mind. So has Shri Narendra Modi. Now, when I talk about Shri Narendra Modi, I'll have to go by what is on display in public life. See, I don't have any means to investigate the truth about the private person that Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi is. I leave a wide margin for the fact that there always will be a chasm or a gulf between what a person appears to be in public and what he or she may really be in private life. So the question arises, which is the real person, that private person or the public persona, or a person as he appears to be in public. But unfortunately, when we deal with public personages like Narendra Modi or Rahul Gandhi, we are at a handicap in the sense that we can go only by what they choose to reveal of themselves in their public life, and therefore what I'm going to do is, or what I'm going to reflect on, depends entirely on how Sri Narendra Modi has presented himself or showcased himself in public life of late. Let's take two instances. And again, I underline, please for God's sake understand. We are taking these instances only as catalysts for thought. We are not taking them up for value judgments. I hope this important distinction is clear. The distinction between taking up something for philosophical reflection on the one hand and taking up something for value judgments. I'm not interested in value judgments. I'm not interested in saying whether Mr. Narendra Modi is morally an inferior person or a superior person. I'm not interested in comparing him to Rahul Gandhi to prove that one is inferior and the other is superior. These things are completely irrelevant to me. irrelevant to me. They may be of supreme importance to others. I wish them well. That's not my concern at all. I'm a thinker on life. I'm singularly focused on life. I'm fascinated by life. Even if I live 1,000 years, the novelty and the mystery of life will never be exhausted for me. That's why I'm still a young thinker in my mind, because life remains forever fresh. More of that on a future occasion. Now let's take two important pictures about Sri Narendra Modi that the media brought home to us in such elaborate detail. One is to take these two scenes in the chronological order. One is Sri Narendra Modi crisscrossing the Indian subcontinent, our country as a whole, one end to the other, with such a kind of heroic, gigantic energy, titanic energy. It amazes me how much energy he has. How much can a man do? It's something that I find very difficult to answer. So we have seen how Sri Narendra Modi works. So he crisscrossed the country, addressing election meetings here, there, everywhere. Someone must write a book on the election enterprises of Sri Narendra Modi, specifically relating to the meetings he addressed, the ideas that he shared, the strategies that he resorted to, and the harmony or the conflict among them, and in the case of both, why and what these things point to. In fact, what I propose to share through this video might contribute to such an enterprise. Okay, now let's stick very strictly to facts. The first thing that we saw was that when it was suspected that the drift of the 2024 elections was not going in favor of the BJP, understandably, Sri Narendra Modi, as the supreme champion of the party, on whose shoulders rested the onerous task of ensuring the victory, the unrivaled, unmatched victory of the party, is bar 400 par, 400 seats this time. He, I think, to a certain extent, panicked, and he resorted to electoral strategies that I think he otherwise would not have. For example, speaking in an election campaign in Rajasthan, Baswada, I think, he spoke about how the opposite coalition, if voted to power, would rob the Hindu community of their hard-earned wealth and distribute it as freebies to the community that produces maximum number of children, whom he also described as infiltrators and unwelcome guests, so on and so forth. Those details don't interest me. And in another context, he pressed the panic button among Hindu voters and said that if the India coalition comes to power, they'll put the Babri Masjid lock on the Ayodhya temple, so on and so forth. In other words, to put it very simply, he played the divisive card. Very simple. He played the divisive card. Now, I don't have to explain this to you, that playing the divisive card shows a very low order of intellect and morality. It might seem very shrewd, a smart thing to do, but it shows a poor quality of the personality. These are, after all, baseless allegations. One is shortchanging the truth, and at the time of making these statements, the speaker himself knows that he is being smarter than being true, and that he is shortchanging truth in order to gain some political gains, and therefore he is showcasing lack of personal integrity in public life. Modi, being as intelligent, as shrewd as he is, he could not have been unaware of it, and for all practical purposes, he did what he did as a matter of deliberate, fully conscious, free choice. So he bears full moral responsibility for it. It's not an accidental slip of the tongue. It's not a casual lapse. It's a deliberate choice as regards electoral strategies, and therefore, when something is deliberately chosen, it has a reference to one's character, as against what a person does either under force. If someone is holding a gun to your temple and making you behave in very unethical ways, then you are absolved of the responsibility for what you do, because you did not act in freedom. You acted out of compulsion or acted under duress. The other is a person acted without any thought. An impulsive action also dilutes the sense of responsibility, though in the second instance, the sense of responsibility is slightly stronger as compared to the first, that is acting purely under duress, under pressure. So, the next ethical issue is whatever a person does has a reference to his character. Character is what a person really is. Character is what a person really is, or character is the truth of a person issuing itself in action. Character is the truth of a person issuing itself in action. So we can judge a person only in terms of his outward actions. Now, in public life, there are two things. One is what a person says, the other is what a person does. Confucius said 600 years before Jesus Christ, a long, long time ago, do not judge people on the basis of what they say. Always judge people on the basis of what they do. And I think that's a very, very sane, sound, practically reliable dictum or guiding principle for our conduct. Judge people not by what they say, but what they do. For example, if the slogan is manufactured, Sabke Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka so on and so forth. Now, it's a beautiful slogan. I mean, it's a slogan that can bewitch anyone. But if the actual actions on the ground belie or contradict the meaning of the slogan, then don't believe the slogan, believe what the person does. And if the actions of the person contradict the slogan, then discard the slogan. That's the stand that Confucius would advocate, and I fully accept it. And Jesus said the same thing. You must judge a tree by its fruits, not by what it appears to be, but by its fruits. So judge people by what they do, by what they express themselves as in public life. And the most authentic way of doing that is to base your judgment about that person on his actions rather than his claims or his statements or his words. So this is what we saw. And then around the fifth phase of the 7-phase elections, I don't know why elections have to be spread out so far. It taxes the patience of the people, it strains the economic activity of the country, and it causes an unnecessary sense of weariness about this most important democratic exercise. Around the fifth phase of the elections, the Prime Minister goes to the Vivekananda Memorial Rock in an attitude of palpable philosophical, spiritual, ethical reverence, and spends nearly 2 days in exemplary meditation. Now, in my mind, I was trying to compare and contrast and trying to harmonize, trying to hold together these two images. The images of the Prime Minister who makes these divisive speeches on the one hand, and the image of the Prime Minister who comes all the way to the southern tip of the country, walking the trail of that great man Swami Vivekananda, casting himself in the mold of a Vivekananda, presenting himself as the latter-day Vivekananda of India, going into the state of deep spiritual meditation, in an attitude that sort of is soaked in reverence in piety, in philosophical, ethical reflection, all the rest of it. In fact, I hope one day Shri Narendra Modi would write out the substance of his meditations as he spent 2 full days in the most crucial period of his political career, meditating on the rock associated with Swami Vivekananda of all people, that giant of spiritual thought, that giant of spiritual intellectual thought, who fascinates me more than any other person in the Indian context. So now the question I ask myself is, which is the real Narendra Damodar Das Modi? Now keep this at the back of your mind. Now I come to what I stated at the beginning, that there are two completely different theories about human nature. One is that there is nothing called human nature. People act according to the compulsions of the given context. Therefore, don't expect any consistency of conduct from anyone. What a person does now under a definite set of circumstances will not be the same as what a person does tomorrow in a vastly changed set of circumstances. So a person is nothing but a series of shifting outlooks, choices, actions, so on and so forth. Now the problem with this view is that in that case the idea of personality becomes extremely dubious. There is no solidity of your personality, or nothing but a series of actions and gestures, all adding up to nothing. So end of the day, you become a bubble and you burst and nothing will be left. So that's the problem with this attitude, though from a practical point of view, this seems to be very advantageous, so that you're not hamstrung by, you're not limited by any particular mandate relating to having to be consistent in your thought and action in public life. So this is one attitude, that we should not expect consistency of behavior, consistency of commitment, thought, conviction, ethical stand, etc. from any individual in public life. And this coheres well with the idea that politics is the art of the possible, and politics is post-truth, so on and so forth. All that gels very well. But there is another attitude, and the other attitude is that every person is one indivisible, total, vital self within him. And all that he does is and must be a continuous expression of that hidden, vital inner life, which cannot be seen by anyone other than himself. Even he himself may not be fully aware of it. But this needs to be expressed. And how is this vital, hidden, mysterious core of the person expressed? Through what he says and what he does. Right? Therefore, from this point of view, what you say and what you do must be consistent. You cannot be a bundle of contradictions. You can't assume an attitude of a pragmatic politician when a situation dictates that you should. And you cannot then switch over to the outward appearance of a sadhu or a saintly thinker or an expert in meditation in a few days later. There must be consistency. Now, the merit of this particular attitude to life is that it contributes to the idea of personal solidity, which is a basic prerequisite for personal stature. Now, think of a person who is like a chameleon, who changes his color every now and then. You can't associate such a person with any gravity, any credibility, any substance and solidity of character. On the other hand, if you sense a substantial core of consistent thought and action in a person who stands up for something consistently, and a person who is heroic enough to pay the price for his convictions, irrespective of what happens, then you begin to respect that person and begin to take him very seriously. Now, what perhaps say Narendra Damodar Modi and his BJP camp need to take more seriously is that this kind of showcasing of the Prime Minister in the public domain As a person who will go to any extent in order to ensure the profit and the victory of his party, is actually destroying the capital of the party, the real wealth of the party. After all, BJP is so heavily centered on one person, Sri Narendra Modi. He is their greatest asset. Therefore, it is in the interest of the BJP to try and protect the image of the Prime Minister and to preserve his credibility so that people across the country may repose their trust in him. Now, I don't have to argue this, that if a person behaves in inconsistent ways, depending on the compulsions of the given context, he will squander away, he'll fritter away his credibility, and he will render it more and more difficult for people in various walks of life. People belong to various religions, cultures, ideologies, stations of life, to trust him. And that will be the greatest destruction, greatest loss, greatest damage to the electoral wealth of the BJP. BJP minus Narendra Damodar Modi is an absolutely mediocre party. It cannot win a single election. I would say even state legislative assembly elections. It is so heavily dependent on him. And for that reason alone, it is incumbent on the party. It is so important, it's a vital interest to the party to preserve the image of the Prime Minister in such a way that people across the country from different backgrounds will be able to repose their trust in the Prime Minister. And if that trust is then squandered away, it is tantamount to committing harakiri. I am surprised, I am aghast that not enough thought is paid to this. Maybe it is because politicians assume that people in India do not think that the common man is an ass, that he can be impressed with anything and he will not put 2 and 2 together and get 4 out of it. That's not the case. The Indian voter is mature, he discerns, and that is very clearly brought home through the results of the 2024 elections. It is dangerous to underestimate the sagacity, the wisdom of the Indian voter. I am afraid UPA 2 did it. I repeat, UPA 2 underestimated the wisdom and the moral sensibility of the Indian voter. They paid dearly for it. They are still paying for it. That must be an object lesson for the BJP and the NDA alliance. The people of India are not fools. They are not morally indifferent. They expect greatness from their leaders, and therefore, if Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi squanders away his moral, spiritual capital, and he is then counterpointed with a Rahul Gandhi whose moral, spiritual, intellectual capital is increasing, then I dare say that in the very near future, Narendra Modi could lose out to Sri Rahul Gandhi completely. I say this out of concern for Sri Modi and his party. I wish everyone well. But how can a leader retain the respect and the trust of the people if he is seen to be a bundle of contradictions in public life? I am afraid and I am surprised that nobody is talking about it, though this should be the foremost subject of discussion. So anyway, these are some of the thoughts that sprang up, mushroomed in my mind when I sort of put together these two images of my Prime Minister, and I'm sure that many of you have done it, and therefore we are walking on familiar territories. I will not prolong my thinking any further then. I want to thank each one of you for the patient attention that you lent to me. In fact, that's the only reason why I have the courage to bother you with these somewhat long reflections. I know that this breaks the most important canon in the social media, that every video must be very brief, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. But for God's sake, please believe you me, I don't know how to compress all my thoughts into a 5-minute video. Having been a teacher all my life, I need my time of leisure to explain concepts and illustrate them in a very leisurely manner, because the research I have done into the dynamics of cognition or of understanding convinces me beyond any doubt that speaking fast minimizes understanding. If I speak fast, my viewers will not be able to understand even 10% of what I'm saying, because that's how our mind is structured. Our mind needs time to soak ideas in. We need time for ideas to settle down. So if I rush you through a tsunami of ideas, then nothing will settle down. It's as good as not claiming even 5 minutes of your time. So please allow me the luxury of retaining the present unhurried, leisurely way of explaining or sharing my thoughts. I want to thank each one of you for your patient attendance as well as your keen interest. So many of you have called me recently to say that they find that you find these videos extremely interesting and that you are sharing them with all your friends. And I am greatly encouraged by this. Let us be a small focal point from where redemptive or timely thoughts reach out and embrace the whole of our country. A country can only be richer for sane and objective thoughts, deeper reflections without any ulterior interest or partisan bias. So have a great day, and may our country be blessed through the life of each one of us. India is great, therefore we have a duty to be great. We cannot afford to be cheap. Being cheap is anti-national. Being silly and puerile, filling our minds with muck, is anti-national. India is great. The soul of India shines, and that light should shine through each one of us. सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदू सिता हमारा हमारा, सारे जहां से अच्छा. जय हिंद.